Hi, this is the voice of Heidie Calero with another economic capsule on the Puerto Rico economy. We just heard that the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, has just raised the Fed funds rate, another hike of 25 basis points. There are some analysts who were saying, well, given the condition of the financial instability that has really risen since March 10 of 2023, that maybe they should pause. But Jerome Powell has said we are still on the road, even if it's just a small amount, but we are on that path of trying to rein in inflation. We have entitled our economic capsule, Balancing Financial Stability and Inflation. So that's a two-edged sword. Remember, 1907, when the Federal Reserve was established, it had one goal, and that was the financial stability of the financial system. But throughout the years, then they added other goals, such as control of inflation and definitely employment. So maybe two of these goals are irreconcilable, or they have some conflicts at times. Whatever that may be, the Federal Reserve has a two-edged sword that will take into account whether they will continue with this hike in interest rates. And I just want to show you what has been happening during the past few years. This first graph depicts the Fed funds rate, which is the blue line, the hikes in the federal funds rate, and the inflation change on a monthly basis, which is the blue line that you see there, or the columns are the inflation rates on a monthly basis in the U.S. That's the Consumer Price Index. And notice that in the last few months, especially here in 2023, you have noticed that this increase in the hikes, which are this blue line, are very high, and they're trying to control inflation. Well, even more of an illustration is these many hikes have taken place in a very short time. And this is the next graph that I'm illustrating for you. Over the past few months, the federal funds rate has risen by 475 basis points. That's a historical hike. Compare that with 2017-18, when the Fed funds increased just by 200 basis points. So it's almost 140% of what it used to be in historical terms, and that increase, that rapid increase, has consequences. And you can see it here in this next graph, in the collapse of selected bank stocks. And we were all surprised back in March 10, 2023, when Silicon Valley Bank indicated, hey, we have a run on the bank, we cannot control, we tried to sell our portfolio of what are really very secure bonds, U.S. bonds and treasury bonds, but they were at a lower interest rate. And now the interest rates, as you saw before, they have been rising. So that bond which they held in custody is worth less, because they were valued at a lower interest rate, and now the interest rates are higher. So those bonds were sold at a loss. And when these depositors saw all that loss that SB had, they started a run, and they started taking out all their funds. And least of all, 89% of their funds deposits were more than $250,000, which is the traditional amount that is insured by FDIC. So intervening very quickly by the Federal Reserve, on Monday, they already had the Silicon Valley Bridge Bank, and they are on the verge of trying to sell, finding a buyer, but they guaranteed all deposits, all of them, including those who were above $250,000. And that also occurred with another bank in cryptocurrency, with Signature Bank. So as you can see in this first graph, that's the Standard & Poor's, that you see the S&P, the index, it had been rising. That's the blue line, thick line that you see there. And it started declining, but it's more or less stable. But notice the stocks. The yellow stock is Silicon Valley, Republic Bank is the red line, and Signature Bank is the green line. So they really collapsed. On the next graph, it's what is happening with the banking stocks in Puerto Rico. Banco Popular, which is the green line, Oriental Bank, which is the orange line, First Bank, which is, Banco Popular is the blue line, and First Bank is the green line, and S&P is, compared to them, yes, they have been also experiencing drops in the value of their stocks, but never the same as occurred in the States with SVB and the Signature Bank, and now more recently also Credit Suisse, which UBS is trying to buy, and they have rescued with at least trying to fund in more money into the bank to avoid a run. Same thing with the Republic Bank, $30 billion by 11 banks and more is in the offing. But the other thing that really, if you want to know, the banks in Puerto Rico, only about 8% of all deposits in Puerto Rico, according to the most recent data, are more than $250,000. So honestly, 92% of deposits in Puerto Rico are FDIC insured, and we don't have this run on the banks as at least we are seeing in this financial instability that the Federal Reserve is trying to stall. And but the next elephant in this crystal scenario is what is happening with the discussion in Congress with the ceiling of the public debt. Back in 2011, the credit of the U.S. was downgraded from AAA to AA. That implies an increase in interest rates to be paid on that debt. And now if Congress continues delaying this discussion and there is this no bipartisan agreement, we are going to see more of that downgrade in terms of the credit of the U.S., and that will really imply even more problems. So the regulators of the financial system, they really must take a good look at the banks, because they were flexibilized, many of them, from $50 billion that were required to have capital ratios and stress tests. They were raised to $250 billion. I think with Dodd-Frank, that deregulation that occurred in 2017 with President Trump will go backwards, and they will now require all these banks to increase capital. True. The banks will say, well, now we will lend less. Well, in Puerto Rico, they're only lending 38%, so I don't see much of a loss. But at any rate, wait for it. More of that regulation will take place. So you be vigilant in terms of your bank, of your investments, and what is happening out there. Don't forget that this is the service of Puerto Rico Economic Pulse, and that if you haven't subscribed, do so by going to the Voice of Heidie Calero. Give us a like in those capsules, and remember, the economy is all of us. Thank you.